You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Reddy, but my friends call me Spanners, so let's be friends. Welcome to our Spanish Grand Prix race review in a Spanish Grand Prix that had its moments, especially for a Spanish Grand Prix at the Circuit de Catalunya. And it was actually a very fascinating and interesting strategy masterclass, and well done to the commentators for only mentioning rain 10 or 15 times. And thank you so much to Komatsu for just saying, no, there's no rain. Stop even thinking about it. So we'll ask today, could Lando Norris have won the Spanish Grand Prix? What was up with Russell? And are you Team Carlos or Team Charles? We are an independent podcast produced in the podcasting shed with the kind permission of our better halves. We aim to bring you a race review before your Monday morning commute. We might be wrong, but we're first. Join us live in Milton Keynes on July 6th for a Missed Apex meetup. It's going to be a live panel and quiz and podcast recording. If you expressed an interest to me via email, check your inbox now. I need you guys to act now so I can start making arrangements for numbers, or go to missedapexpodcast.com/live show. It's at Formula Fast, but you do not have to do any karting. Just 15 quid to help us cover the hire of the venue. We've got the mezzanine deck over the top of the track. It's at 8 o'clock, but if you turn up beforehand, there's open spots for karting as well. Really great value, 35 quid for 25 minutes. See if you can get to the top of the Missed Apex leaderboard. Could you be faster than Matt Trumpets? Hello, Matt.
5 more laps, and we'd have had a race in Spain.
We can't keep doing that, though. The amount of races where they go, oh, yeah, but just 18 more laps. And I'll tell you why it's a myth, because oftentimes the car at the front sees the gap coming down. They don't immediately go, oh, I've got to expand. They manage their tyre wear. And then when it gets within about 4 or 5 seconds, that's when they start doing it. So people do the maths of, he gained a second in the last 3 laps. Therefore, if it was just 10 laps longer, he'd have caught him. But I don't think it's true.
Yeah, well, I'm going with McLaren still had the faster car, so I think it would have been a race.
Oh, we can argue. I think we'll get to argue about that. Someone who I argue with anyway, just for the sake of it, it's Alex Jeansy Vangeen. Hello, Alex.
Hello, Spanners. We had a great race where we actually had we had lots and lots of competition with a new winner. No, hang on. That bloke won again.
We nearly, though.
Nearly. If we just had 17 more laps.
I think what was quite telling was that the gap was relatively small at the end. So even if that was managed to an extent, it's not the 10, 15, 20 seconds we've been accustomed to. There was a fight today.
See, this is where I think where we talk about, did McLaren have the faster car today, or was just Lando in McLaren a better package than Max in the Red Bull? Doesn't necessarily mean either car was better. And we're being proved right that Lando is as good as we've all thought he is all along.
And joined fresh from McLaren, straight out of the lake, is Antonia Rankin. Hello, Antonia.
Hi. It's been ages since I've been here, but rest assured, I'm only here so I can argue with Alex.
Yeah, okay. But did you know swimming in the McLaren lake today?
Not this time,
No.
but I did see lots of fishes, and I'm scared of fishes, so maybe not next time either.
Yeah, I'm scared of fishes. They can breathe fully underwater, just flapping around.
One of them did a little leap out of the water. I was like, oh, no, not
it's
for Antonia.
It's no good. No, let's go away from fishes and talk about the Spanish Grand Prix. All right, I think, where do we start, Matt? We've got to start with Red Bull and Verstappen. So as I was discussing just then with Alex, we saw Red Bull stretched today. Now, here, one of my primary complaints of the last season has been, the last sort of year or so has been, well, Verstappen and Red Bull could have been making mistakes, could have been having issues, and it wouldn't have mattered. And I'm sure he had some brilliant race days last year where he put everything together, where he was pushing, but it didn't matter if you were 20 seconds ahead and the competition were nowhere near. So, like the Hungarian Grand Prix, he spun on his own and it really didn't make a difference. He didn't even come close to making a difference. But today, I think he had to drive a perfect race. I think things had to go well for them. They had to do their 1.9 second pit stop to keep the pressure up on the teams behind. So I think we genuinely saw like a great Red Bull Verstappen performance that we can go, hey, no, that was great today.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that entirely, because we did not see him drive a perfect race. There was the off at turn 7, but I think that speaks to the larger point you're making, which is the margins he's having to drive that car in now are no longer ones that give him any real comfort. He's completely on it throughout the race, even in the management phase, to keep everything together. He complained about inconsistent tires, but he had to win that race at the start. I think if Norris got away ahead of him, it's Norris's race to lose at that point. And the fact that he had to go off-roading and that didn't seem to bother him just made it all the more impressive that he was able to get in front of Norris by the end of the first turn.
Even haters like Vangeen have to look at a performance like today and say, yeah, come on. That was pressure today. They could have, well, maybe other teams threw it away a little bit too.
I mean, Max has shown some weakness in the past under pressure, but I think what we found now is Red Bull have been pushed out of their comfort zone from where they were, and it's proving more difficult, especially for the other driver in their team. And Max is showing his quality, that he is able to deal with a car that's difficult now that it's being pushed, and keeping the McLaren behind. I think Lando got unlucky today, or just got a bad start, which ruined everything else. But you know, it's really great to see the competition is starting to get closer, and that we actually, I think at the moment, the best performing package is Lando Norris in that McLaren, and I'm here for it.
Oh, hang on a minute. The car is the best performing package.
No, best performing package, car and driver
combination.
However, I do think in qualifying the Red Bull had the legs on McLaren. I mean, the only reason, but I do think the Red Bull had the legs on the McLaren in qualifying, but I think in race trim at the moment, the McLaren is looking way better, and I'm here for it.
I think if that were entirely true and McLaren's package were better, then they would have run the race today, but they didn't. I think every fan will agree what the problem was with the past, season or so, is that the dominance from Red Bull was so emphatic that there were no battles. And I think it would be difficult for anyone really to argue that, yeah, Max won today, but it was a fantastic race. We all really enjoyed watching it. And the actual outcome of Max winning wasn't, didn't put a dampener on all of the fantastic racing we've seen. And what McLaren have displayed from, the middle of last season to now is that their development processes and their upgrade packages that they are bringing are incredibly valuable and take really big chunks out of the advantage that a team like Red Bull come into the season with. So what we've all been talking about for the past year has been, 2 or 3 teams right at the front. And we're finally getting it. And of course, now we're pulling it apart. But this is the start of a really, really exciting period.
Yeah, but it's all really close. Yet Verstappen is still ending up ahead. But the common consensus seems to be, Matt, that Red Bull didn't have the best overall car this weekend. And so Alex is saying that that's McLaren. And you go, well, I don't quite know how people are drawing that conclusion. I would draw the conclusion that the field has closed up.
Well, yeah, you'd have to. I mean, I spent some time because of the nature of the questions being asked. I spent some time looking at all lap times from all the different cars, and it was very clear at the end of the race when they were both in clear air after they'd gotten beyond Alonso and before Verstappen caught Sargent, that Lando was easily half a second, 0.6 seconds faster most laps. Now, some of that, as you said earlier, is that this is Max managing the bleeding. But the fact of the matter is, he was still bleeding. He was bleeding time. And were it not for everybody's favorite driver, George Russell.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we see a different outcome, at least in the sense that you've got Lando and Max next to each other racing for the first position at the end of the race.
That's a really good point, actually. I think you've risen there, is that, we're very quick to talk about, could Lando have run the race? George Russell's contribution and so was Lewis Hamilton's. We had a really, really great race from Mercedes. And at the start of the race, I was thinking, oh, you know what? They're going to drop straight down. They're going to drop like stones. They might have the quali pace, but they don't have the race pace. And you know what they did? And it's really, really fantastic to see drivers like George Russell, who, to be honest, I don't think has had a chance with the car that he has to really show off the skills that he exhibited in the Williams. And it's really nice now, especially amid all of the talk about him potentially being kicked out of Mercedes. It's great to see him have the opportunity to really get his elbows out.
Okay, I think I've got a counter to McLaren having the best car, right? So if we I want to focus on Verstappen's race, and if you look at the beginning of the race, yes, he got a good enough start. He got a better start than Lando Norris, than Lewis Hamilton around him. Talk about the George Russell maneuver, the slingshot in a minute. But when Verstappen had the opportunity to go past Russell Russell hadn't at that point completely gone into Russell melts tyre mode. Verstappen could make that move stick fairly comfortably. So yes, I mean that defense from Russell was a bit weird, but when it came to Norris coming to overtake, and then Russell by that point having chewed his tires, Alex, Norris couldn't get by. So I think it's just it feels a bit previous to say out and out Verstappen doesn't have the best car right now.
So they talked about this in the post race, which was they were saying the first couple of laps, he had to get himself past George because after a couple of laps, tyres start to overheat and you can't pass. So I think by the time Lando had got himself to George Russell, his tyres had overheated and he wasn't able to have the performance that Max did at that particular time. I also think, obviously, George had no one in front of him giving him any form of tow when Max came past, and we know how efficient the DRS is on that Red Bull. So I think that was a key factor to it being very easy for Max and more difficult for Lando.
So the key to passing down the front straight with DRS was being within about a half a second or so of the person ahead of you and having DRS. But I think everyone's missing the really obvious thing here, which is that McLaren runs a Mercedes power unit, and so does, Mercedes. I think Max had an advantage in the way the power unit was mapped because Red Bull had thought it out, and that advantage was essentially nullified for Norris. Plus, in general, the way he's driven is to have a tire advantage later on in the stint. So he may have also been making the choice he may have early on made the choice to save tires and go faster to reduce any undercut that he might encounter.
Okay, but I still think all of that means that Verstappen probably had a better car. So if you say like the engine is part of the car, the way it's mapped is the setup of the engine.
Well, but see, I'm going to argue with you because at the end of the race, he was faster. He was significantly faster than Max. But I think in terms of passing Russell, and he had
a massive tire offset.
Yeah, I think there's so many factors there, though. I think, Max wasn't pushing, Lando was. There, I don't think we can really compare that as if it's a quali lap.
Yeah, this is why, because on the surface of it, you can go, well, at least we're having the argument, which is not an argument we've been having for the last year and a half. So the fact that we're even having it is good, but we didn't get to see Verstappen, in a mode where he had to chase or had a car right behind him in that final stint. Alex, go on.
Across the whole race, we actually, apart from in that first stint when, again, Lando, because of his bad start, got himself stuck behind George Russell, we actually never saw Max and Lando on the same tyre in the same condition. So it's impossible to... So, yes, Lando was always quicker from his first pit stop because he had 10-lap younger tyres. So, of course, he's going to be faster. And it's also what put him in that position to have to go and pass both Mercedes. I don't think he had to pass a Ferrari, but it put him in that position where he had to go and fight and burn his tyres up and get it all going. So I still think Max had it firmly under control. But if we hadn't have lost Lando to George on the first lap, we might have seen a better comparison.
Right. I'm going to be slightly annoying about this. Max came in for brand new softs on lap 44. Norris came in for 3-lap old softs on lap 47. I'm going to argue at the end of the race, they were on pretty similar tires in terms of their total tire life. And again, if we're going back to qualifying, well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but did Norris get pole position? So how are we arguing that Max has a better car in qualifying?
I think this is all, if I'm honest, a little bit null because Max won the race. It's really great to be able to talk about it. And it was really interesting. One of the things that we're really saying a lot at McLaren was like, yeah, we're really disappointed to get second, but we're lucky to be disappointed about second. And I think we need to take on that mentality as well, where we did not think this time at the start of the season that we were going to be having a battle with McLaren and Red Bull, But at the end of the day, Red Bull won the race. Red Bull take the points home. There's no points for quali. There's no points with, but they did have the better car. Doesn't matter. They didn't win.
And Verstappen made a comment like, yeah, I think I did well there, but it's not sustainable. So it's sort of hinting that he's a little bit worried about McLaren coming through.
One thing I will say will be really interesting, and I don't think it's something that people are thinking about much, is
what is it?
We haven't seen Verstappen be defensive in years. We haven't seen him have to get scrappy, have to really, really fight for race position since, 2021, dare I say? And back then he was much younger, much scrappier. And I think it would be really interesting to see the kind of driver he becomes when his precious P1 is challenged, because realistically, in the past couple of years, if a driver sees a Red Bull behind them and they're in P15, they will just move across because they go, it's not my fight, it's not my battle. I'd love to see.
You're right. You're right. And this is where the friendship between Norris and Verstappen might get tested. So what did you think of the covering off and defense, Alex, of Lando Norris putting Verstappen into the grass? It's, I've done that to Kyle. You've done that to Kyle. We've all done that to Kyle on a go-kart track. But they definitely sort of run him off the road.
He got a poor start. Well, he got his initial launch was good, and then as he hit second gear, he got wheel spin, and you see the whole car jerk to the right. And then obviously he's gone to cover Max because he's got the wheel spin. But by the time he's gone to cover Max, Max is already part the way alongside him. And yeah, he's put Max on the grass. But I find it an incredible grasp of irony that Max Verstappen is complaining about people putting him on the grass. So to be fair, as far as I'm concerned, it's karma. And get on with it, Max.
He did eventually leave him room. It's just that initially he didn't leave him room. And I just thought, how well will, because they definitely seem like they're good close personal friends, hang out all the time, do sim racing and stuff. If it becomes a title fight, both of them will do that. So I think Antonia's sort of implying that Verstappen, hey, he's just chilled out now. He's just a calm, Dutch master, just hanging out in his windmill. I think the second a title fight comes back in, he'll wake up to the fact that there's a threat coming. But he might get caught out like Lewis Hamilton got caught out in 2021, where suddenly Verstappen was being so uber aggressive, Hamilton didn't have an immediate answer for it, because I think the rest of the grid assumed that kind of driving would get penalised. And it just didn't in 2021. So if Max has calmed down, he might get surprised again by Norris coming in and being the Verstappen.
But we saw lots of aggressive racing today with that kind of stuff. There was some great stuff through turn one. There was a brilliant battle between George and Lando for multiple corners. Isn't it amazing what happens when you're not allowed to just run somebody off the circuit? So it will be interesting to see these two go properly head-to-head for race wins when Lando can sort his starts out and get himself off the line. And I'm here for it because I just really believe watching these two go together won't end in tears. I believe
you don't think
they
so?
will race each other hard and fair, and I actually believe they won't have a falling out over it because they've known each other for so long and are genuine mates. And you can separate it unless your name is Rosberg or Hamilton.
I think my prediction is if it becomes a title fight, I think they will fall out. I think it will test their friendship once carbon fiber goes flying.
Max is bored. Okay, he's said it himself. He's like a 7-year-old who's been abandoned in the middle of Tesco's. He needs something to do, something to battle against. And I think he'll rise to it in an enthusiastic and, aggressive way, because I think he'll get his spark back. I think he'll see a challenger arising and he'll roll up his sleeves and go, okay, round 2. Ding, ding, let's go,
All right, I want to raise a question here, because to me, this race was absolutely won at the start by Max Verstappen, refusing to let Lando squeeze him. But mainly because I think the Red Bull has such a superior launch, especially in this second phase. But I'm going to ask a related question. Do we think that Lando is weak at the start of races?
We don't know. I don't know what it's like to start a Formula One car.
Neither does he.
Right.
Neither does he. It's his second pole. Of course he's weak off the start. He's used to following behind, just trying to stay out of trouble.
I think did you not hear that story about that greyhound that kept finishing second? And what they found out was that it was actually really short-sighted. So they gave it contact lenses and then it could chase the rabbit, because what it was doing was just staying behind the lead dog. And that's why it finished second every race. So maybe that's Norris's issue. He's waiting for someone to go in front so he can follow. Tell me where turn 1 is.
Lando definitely had that winning mentality today, though. The switch has definitely been flicked from when he actually finally won his first race, and he's like, "Oh, I can do this now. I can go out there and I can be the best out there and I can go and win races." And he was so gutted that he didn't win today. In his post-press conference, Natalie Pinkham was trying to say, "Oh yeah, but you had a really good race. You know, you came second." He goes, "Yeah, but you're now second in the championship." He goes, "Yeah, but I've lost ground to Max." "Oh, but you've moved up." "It doesn't matter that I've moved up. I've lost. If anybody else was ahead of me, that would have been okay and would have been a win. But I've now lost more ground to Max."
I think I could write a research paper about the evolution of Lando Norris into a winning mentality, championship winning driver. If you even look at his media stuff that he did in the first couple of years at McLaren, he was very boyish. He was very, very joking, very
Improv.
endearing,
It was
but
like
not by
SNL,
any means
yeah.
having the same mentality as drivers like Lewis Hamilton and, the ones who were actually winning races. And it seemed 2 seasons in, he realized that. And he suddenly clicked into the, I'm not in F1 to be joking around and, singing in the car on the radio, because whilst it makes great memes and it made him likable, he wasn't winning. And then a second stage of development over the course of this season where he's actually realized he has a real good chance of winning races, being a championship contender. And he's gone, "Okay, this isn't go-karting anymore. Let's go." And it's great.
See, because you're quite young. You've forgotten, you would not have seen that Lewis Hamilton used to be fun and make jokes and be nice. And then the press just tall poppied him and he got really grumpy and insular and closed off. And then 2011 happened. But yeah, Alex, go on, Alex.
Yeah, the media ruined Lando Norris, unfortunately, because he came in as the happy-go-lucky guy and was always fun and down to do stuff.
And then middle-aged broadcasters were like, "Improv with me, Lando, improv with me." And then he started going, "Oh man, no, it's cringe now." It's
it goes back to when Daniel Ricciardo said that Martin Brundle was frothing at the mouth to drink the champagne from his boot.
Everyone wanted in on that,
and it's one of those things. It's like, just let it happen naturally. Don't force it. And they forced it, and he's gone, "Actually, enough's enough. I'm just going to be serious now." Yeah. And they ruined it. They ruined the fun for all of us.
Okay, we need a new one. It's all right. We need a new Lando, Matt. So Matt, I think, is this a good time to move on to this strategy side of McLaren as well?
We can. I have kind of a related segue question then, since my first one didn't spark the absolute war that I'd hoped. Is starting on pole position in Barcelona the worst place to be?
Is it the worst pole position? Yeah, because it's downhill. It was into a
very long run as well. It's one of the longest runs to the first corner on the calendar.
Yeah, and so the start itself was absolutely fascinating. So apart from the fact that Norris and Hamilton sort of both bogged down a bit, that's got to be one of the most interesting starts on the calendar, because as Norris and Verstappen were kind of lining each other up and pushing each other onto the grass, and the Ferraris were swamping Hamilton, George Russell just picks a point around the outside and just flies past 3 or 4 people to take the lead of that Grand Prix. And that was a genuine stand-up superstar wow moment. And just for a second, I kind of forgot where I am on the how good do I think George Russell is. And I just went, wow, that's what superstars do.
It was like that moment at Silverstone, I think it was 2022, when we had 2 of them battling out. I think it was Leclerc and someone. And there was this sudden moment where Crofty then went, and through goes Hamilton. And whilst we're watching one thing, another driver can just sail through. And that's, for me, what really made George Russell click in a lot of people's minds, because he is an incredibly intelligent driver. And he can really effectively assess a corner, assess his attack mode, and go for it. And today we really saw it pay off for the first time in so long. And it's so nice to see George Russell, who was this superstar young driver, this superstar young guy at Williams, finally have a few moments where people actually appreciate how good he can be.
I hate to
No.
to ruin your chips,
No.
but unfortunately, and listen, bear in mind, I am a George fan, and it was really well done from George that he managed to get through without killing anybody. But it was a little bit like Alex Albon last weekend, which was, oh crap, I'm in a position, I've got loads of slipstream, I don't want to brake, I'll just go to the left. Oh crap, I've overtaken 2 of them. Oh, I'm leading. That's what happened. There was absolutely zero intention to take the lead at that first corner, because he even said it himself in the post-race interview, which is, I'd imagine what could happen in my mind. I didn't think that would happen, especially because he was so close, and I mean so close to hitting whichever Ferrari was next to him. Yeah, that was a case of, oh my God, I've got a lot of overspeed. We're getting very close to a braking zone. I need to not be behind 2 cars, or there's a really big crash.
Okay, 2 things. I've definitely been in that position where I had no intention of overtaking. Say I know that the cars in front are much faster than me. Say it's like Brad and Danny ahead, and then the circumstances, you have a thing like that and you go, oh no, I have to overtake Danny and Brad and I really don't want to. So that does happen, but you're poo-pooing the Albon overtake from Montreal just like Brad did, and I'm not having it. That was such a good overtake. I know he kind of had to do it, but he had to do it.
Listen, the plaudits is there that he had the skill to pull it off, but he didn't mean to do it. You know, and we've all been in, I say we all, anyone who's done any racing has been in that position where it's like, oh, okay, I've kind of got no choice. I mean, we had that multiple times on Friday during the Missed Apex iRacing event. Me and you, Spanners, plowing our way through the field. We had many moments where like, oh, okay, I've got so much slipstream, I've just got to go through, otherwise I'm not going to go anywhere. So it's that whole thing of they don't mean to do it, but they have enough skill to carry them through it.
Alex, we worked together instead of wiping each other out from opposite sides of the track for once.
Shake and bake.
We actually teamed up. Yeah, we shaked and baked it up the grid. Rankin.
I just think he deserves more credit than saying he got lucky. He still had to be in the gap. He still had to go for the gap, see it opening up, and say, "Stop shaking your hand, Mr. Alex. I'm talking."
Yeah.
I didn't say he got lucky.
You said he didn't mean to do it.
Yes, he didn't mean to do it.
I don't think that's true. I think he had to be in the gap and see the opportunity. I mean, you can get into a gap and the opportunity closes up, or you can get into a gap and say, "Oh, let's see what happens." You're still meant to be there.
I think he nailed it.
He had 2 choices in that instance: dive to the left and hope he had space, or brake. And we know George Russell, and he's never going to brake.
Have you met him?
Huh? I've watched every single one of his Formula 1 races and a lot of his GP2 races.
He is a great driver. He went for a gap and the opportunity was there. He had to go for the gap.
You know she's having a go at the George Russell fan in our group.
Yeah, right? I know. But I think the thing with Missed Apex is we are actually harder on the drivers. We are actually harder on the drivers that we're fans of. And I just want to share the challenge I'm having with the audio here, which is Alex refuses to turn his mic down, even though I've asked him. And the first sound he makes out of every sentence is always double the volume of the subsequent talking. So my fader is being worn out here. And if you come to the live show in Milton Keynes on July 6th, you'll hear that we basically turn Alex's mic off and we don't need it. Alex has got a voice.
We've been doing this since 2016. Fine. You know this by now. I don't know why you're surprised ever.
So Matt's going to be there for you. Is this arranged, Matt? Are you coming over to Milton Keynes?
Yeah.
Excellent. That's great. We have got a Vangeen. It's coming, even though you're going to Silverstone at 6 a.m. for the Grand Prix.
Going to be very tired. It's the reason Lauren isn't coming to the show.
We've got Antonia, if work allows.
Potentially, yes. I'm really going to fight. I'm really going to try really hard.
Fight and do it. And these go-karts have got seatbelts, so you can't fall out of these ones if you have a go.
They don't have seatbelts. You can definitely fall out.
Actually, I'm so good with cheering on.
We are going to have a little bit of a quiz as well. So me and Matt will face our ritual quiz humiliation. We'll record a live show that will come out the following week, and we'll sit and we'll have a bucket of beer and wine. So you can come and do what do you call it? On a system where you just stick a quid in for a can or whatever, and come and hang out with us. All right, click the link in the show notes below, missedapexpodcast.com/live show. But Matt, the tactical side for me for McLaren was really, really surprising. I know you were all trying to take me down the George Russell route, but we'll get to Mercedes, I promise. The very next thing. But McLaren, who to me have been one of the most bulletproof tactically teams, I felt like, getting everything right, really being able to read the situation. Tell me if I've got this right. They went for like a really, really ballsy overcut, and their reward was 6 laps worth of newer tyre for that second stint.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, not even 6 laps. I mean, it was 3 laps in the end because he'd gotten close enough to Max that covering him off at that point made more sense than staying out. But essentially, you've got the right of it.
No, and this is it. No, but this is it. The making more sense to cover Max off instead of extending again and doing the tyre advantage. This is the thing that's making me kind of go, surely you could have seen that coming. Because, and I'll just, give me a shot of this. I know you're the strategy guy and the tyre guy, I know. But when you go from old tyres and then somebody undercuts to new mediums, so old softs to new mediums, there's a delta, but it's relatively small. It's still a powerful undercut. But when you're on old mediums and then Max goes back to old softs, to brand new softs, that tyre delta is massive. So every lap you earn yourself in tyre life is only worth about half a lap on the other end. So it was just a worthless overcut in the end. And it just really surprised me that they went for it and gave up track position on 3 cars.
Yeah, on the one hand, I understand the point that you're making, but what I think you're missing is where Norris was on track relative to the traffic behind him. This is going to be one of the big reasons to run longer in that stint, because he wanted to be clear of any of the traffic that he didn't absolutely need to pass. Not that he couldn't pass them, but every time you make a pass like that, you take more life out of your tires than you would if you were just driving around at the exact speed that you intended to. And the second thing is, he knew, and I suspect McLaren knew, that the end of the race would favor them even more than the beginning of the race. So they were less concerned about a second here or a second there, relatively speaking, because they knew once they were on that new tire, they'd recapture that. Like if you look at the in lap and the out lap and compare them, he doesn't lose time. And then he's gaining time from that point on. So the question is, how much margin do you leave yourself and how much time do you think you can gain on average per lap while you're threading your way through the back markers? And they just were off by about 5 laps.
Well, it wasn't back markers though, isn't it? He's having to get past Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, who to be fair waved him through, and then George Russell, who is just an excitable puppy dog in those situations, Alex. Like, yeah, you said it was a really great fight, but he was never going to win that. He cost himself a bunch of time. That put Lewis Hamilton right on the rear of him, and we know that's his most important target. So you go, oh yeah, it's a great fight. I'm glad we watched it, but also why?
That fight, however spectacular it was, cost him 3rd place in this Grand Prix. Because he had a decent gap over. He had a decent gap over Lewis. He should have however much I hate to say this, if he'd let Lando go through and just tagged onto the back of Lando, he wouldn't have been dropped into the clutches of Lewis, and then the team wouldn't have gone, right, maybe it's time for a pit stop now. We'll stick you on the hards. That didn't work. And that ruined everything else for George at the end of the day. But if we can talk about that battle.
Yeah, go on.
Just because we haven't had a battle like that at the front of the grid for a really, really long time. And I want to dissect it a little bit, if you'll indulge me. And it was just some really clever, brilliant car placement by both drivers, letting each other race, letting each other stay on the track, no running each other off, no contact at all. And it was just some of the best stuff I've seen, and I want to see more of that. And it's the rules that we have in Formula One today, where you are allowed to run each other off the track, denies us these kinds of battles. But I think because George and Lando have been racing together since they were babies and they're good mates, they gave each other the space to fight and they could trust each other to not run each other off the circuit. And it was just really, really wonderful to watch.
Maybe to an extent, there's a little bit to learn there for George. Like I said, he hasn't been in a position to be fighting for track position, fighting these battles. So to an extent, he probably doesn't know how much he should push it. But hear me out. I think there's probably also a little bit of desperation from George to prove himself, because he's got a
100%.
contract renewal coming up.
Totally.
He's in one of the best cars on the grid now. And at the moment, he's not going to be in it for much longer. So he saw the opportunity to get scrappy, to really prove that he can fight and can fight for position. And, it wasn't probably, obviously, in the long run, wasn't the best idea. But I think it was just an act of, right, I'm here. I've got the opportunity now. I'm going for it, whether it was the right choice or not.
He's like that all the time, though, with everything. He's absolutely like 100%. And so, yeah, it's an interesting, if that's a look into his psychology, that he still feels he's got something to prove, I think it's probably a little bit more inherent. And I think that shows in how I want to use my tyres up now. I want to go fast now. I want to push now. I want to fight this battle now. And Hamilton I don't think he even registered on Norris's radar. Hamilton just went into ghost mode and let Norris go through.
No, on the first, he defended him for one lap. So he did defend. He defended him on the first time Lando came to him. He definitely went middle of the road, couldn't let Lando get past him. It was only because Lando got so close to him through the last corner. Lewis was like, "Oh, I don't stand a chance here. He's letting me past." The problem George has, he is, and okay, everyone's going to talk ham-focy, blah blah blah, whatever. He is in a team next to the greatest driver of all time, statistically, and when you're the person in that position, you have no choice but to absolutely give it everything and try and push as hard as you can to prove yourself. Because at the end of the day, he is 100% holding his own against the greatest driver of all time. And for me, that really shows that he is a top level driver. He's still got a lot to learn. He's still got more maturing to do. But I don't think he's doing a bad job. He's just not doing as good a job as the greatest driver of all time, which is fair.
If he really wanted to make a point, he would be more consistent and make his tires last as long as Lewis did. The thing is...
Totally. But that's the thing that set Lewis apart. Sorry, Matt. But that's the thing that sets Lewis apart. The thing that sets Lewis apart from everybody else is his consistency, is his tire management. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut over you, but that's the difference between the greatest of all time and other drivers.
But I'm saying he's busy trying to pass people to make a point. But the point he needs to make isn't the one that I can pass people. The point he needs to make is I can manage tires just about as well as Lewis can, because that's the key to success in the era in which we find ourselves. To me, the other thing is being intelligent about where your fight really is on track. Now, you're accusing Lewis of defending Norris, and he did. He took up an inside position when he saw him coming, which is his standard defensive tactic. And when he saw that Norris was too far back, he just let him around another lap. But he made no serious effort to keep his nose in that second time because he could see the move was done. Russell was kind of the opposite there. He prolonged that battle at his own expense, and he's got enough experience now. He should start to be learning to think better of that, or his engineer needs to be informing him. Our fight is not with Norris. Don't lose any extra time defending here.
Are you saying it's a little bit too late now to put it down to youthful exuberance?
Well, I'm just saying we're on the cusp of where you'd expect a driver who's going to go on to potentially fight for world championships should start demonstrating that they're mastering these lessons. I'm not saying it's a hard and fast, there's no chance of it, but we're definitely hitting there should be some learning here going on.
Okay, Skrauss makes the point that I always try and make with this, because all people with Piastri keep saying, well, he's quick, all he needs to do is sort out the tyre management. And Skrauss is saying, make your tyres last like Lewis did, is kind of like saying, other basketball players should have just scored as much as Michael Jordan did. I don't think it's we've just got to sort that one thing out. I think some drivers drive in a way that are good at managing these tyres, and some drivers aren't as good at that. And here's the thing, though, it's predictable. Every single time we come to a high wear circuit and we say it's going to be a two-stop, we can predict which drivers are going to struggle. So it's predictable, and we do predict it. We said Russell is going to struggle today. Piastri is going to struggle today. And it's come to pass. I don't think we're at this point, Matt, where it's just like, if they just a couple of tweaks and he'll be able to make a tyre stint go. I think they're just not as good at managing the tyres as those drivers, and they might never be.
They might never be, but you have to make that your priority. If you are a professional and you have to do a thing, and the thing is, you can go and look at the lap times. You look at the lap times of Lewis in clean air, and you look at George in clean air, and there's a much bigger inconsistency. The standard deviation, let's say, would be higher in George's laps than in Lewis's laps. And it's not much. It's a little braking here. It's a little sliding there. I remember just out of nowhere, Ricardo being coached when he was in the McLaren, and the amount of information they're giving him about, like, in Singapore, they were like, this turn, you need to do this turn, you need to do this. It would make me nuts. I would never want to have, this is my job, because I just couldn't pay that much attention to it. But if you want to be as good as Lewis learned how to drive on these tires. He raced with people who were better on those tires than him. He saw that was a problem, and he made it his job to figure out how to drive those tires so that they did what he wanted them to do. And that's what George needs to do. He needs to look at Lewis's telemetry. He needs to look at everybody else's, whatever other information he can get, and solve this problem. And it's not a big problem. And that means it's really hard to do. The tinier the problem, the harder it is to change. And that's where he is right now.
So ultimately, I know this just turned into like wailing on George Russell. I didn't mean to be.
No, I don't want it to mean like that. It is, as a musician, like when you have a tiny thing to fix, it takes forever to do it because you're so close. And it's only the tiniest little habit you have to change. It takes forever to do. This is the hardest thing. This is the hurdle he has to clear.
The feeling I get is that Mercedes they have all the data. They know this. They know what we're talking about. They know that race pace in higher wear races is a real issue. That's why I think they're still talking to Verstappen, still trying to convince Verstappen. That's why they're looking at this superstar Antonelli. I don't think they're seeing George Russell as the team leader, and I think it is because of this. Now, for the rest of the season, Mercedes have got a real problem. Do they want to push for wins? Because today, if Hamilton had had a better start, I still don't think they quite had the pace to be up there with the top two. But there will be other races where there is that opportunity for Lewis Hamilton to get in the mix for race wins. And at the moment, for the last year, the pattern that they have been following is Russell, getting a better start, being ahead in qualifying or whatever, and using up his tyres nice and early, having lots of pace early, pitting earlier, getting an undercut, ending up back ahead of Lewis Hamilton. And at the end of every stint today, you had a Lewis Hamilton who was faster and having to sit behind him. At the beginning of the race, George Russell was basically holding up Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton. If Norris hadn't have been there, would they have done the swap? No, they wouldn't, because they said, how much are you pushing, George? And he said, more than everyone else around me. But he would have done that, not let Lewis Hamilton by, and then, pitted out of the way probably potentially because he needs to pit a little bit sooner. Then he gets the undercut. Then he's back ahead again. So I don't know what we're going to do, Alex. For the rest of the season, that's what Hamilton's got to deal with, a roadblock from his own team.
90% of this could be solved if Lewis could sort his bloody qualifying out. He did it this weekend. He managed to out-qualify George, but he is 8-2 to George Russell on qualifying. And that is the biggest problem, because I completely understand that Mercedes are not going to move George out of the way for Lewis Hamilton because Lewis is Judas and Lewis is leaving. And okay, do they want to fight for wins? Blah blah. But I don't think they believe that they have the pace to fight for wins. So all they're doing is swapping positions.
Right, first of all,
hang on. Sorry, little final point. They finished 17 seconds behind Max Verstappen today, which is kind of the same kind of difference they've been finishing behind. They've just moved ahead of Ferrari, which isn't good.
No, so I'm going to put my foot down on this, that we can't take those finishing times as read, because like Hamilton basically gapped George Russell and then sat there. If you looked at the lap times, he got enough of a gap to Russell and then went, let's make sure my tyres don't blow up, because he wasn't going to catch Norris. So I don't think you can say 17 seconds is sort of representative of anything in a way. But also, the qualifying thing's finished now because the Intergalactic Government Council found out that how the tire blankets were having an issue at the Mercedes garage. And so it was interesting. He had a tire blanket issue in Q1 and lost 0.7 of a second on that lap. And then he sort of was begging Bono, saying, please make sure we get these temps right. And it looks like that's an issue that they might have got on top of. And lo and behold, he had a decent qualifying, even though he had a few mistakes. So I think that issue is parked. But even if Lewis Hamilton qualifies ahead of George Russell by 1 place, Russell is still going to do the tactic that gets him in front of Lewis Hamilton, whether that be the cheeky go long, wait for the safety car, or undercut, get ahead, and be a roadblock, even though he's not going to have the pace for the rest of the stint.
All he is content with is beating Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
He knows he's not going to win the championship. All he wants is to have on his resume of 3 years with Lewis Hamilton, I won 2 out of 3. Because he can ride on that for the rest of his career.
Yeah, but I just want to annoyingly admit that Spanners is completely right about that third stint. They knew they weren't in a race with the McLaren or the Red Bulls, with Max and Lando. And so once their internal dispute was settled, that was the end of that. Whereas I would still argue at the front, Max had more to be concerned about from Lando. So he was going to leave a lot. He was going to try and go faster, or at least as less slow as he could manage.
Sorry, can we just touch on that? Because you've just briefly mentioned Perez and it's sparked me into...
No, I thought, can we not just leave him alone? Can we not just...
What, leave him alone the way he leaves the rest of the field alone and avoids podiums? Yeah.
Yeah, he leaves the scoreboard alone. We can leave him alone.
He leaves lap time alone.
Oh, okay, fine. Go on. Go ahead.
It hurts my heart. It hurts to see it just as a fan. Fan first. Watching Perez.
Oh, he's got 2 fans.
No. As a fan of the sport, let me make that exceptionally clear.
Oh, you do not want to mess with Perez. He's got loads of fans.
Oh, clearly, because where else is that contract coming from? It's not speed. It's not race results. It's really starting to jar me because we have so many good drivers trying to break into the sport. And Mr. finishing half the field away from his very, very successful teammate isn't quite cutting it for me anymore.
Okay, so if the Express are listening and want to publish that quote again, it's Rankin, Rankin.
Do we want to know exactly how far he finished off Max today?
Please tell.
59.52 seconds.
Yeah.
Which is almost a second per lap.
Okay. Right. I love you both.
Ugh.
But you have wandered far off the track. Let's consider the following thing. He came into this race with a 3-spot grid penalty.
His own fault.
And a 1-minute deficit?
They compromised. Please let me finish. They compromised his qualifying in hopes to make the car better at passing.
Yeah.
But it was, it wasn't really better. I mean, we heard from Max about the inconsistency with the tires. We know how windy it was there, but you can't overlook the difficulties being that far back in the field will have on a car like the Red Bull, the amount of turbulence that he had to deal with. But you're missing the most important thing. You can't possibly bring up the finishing difference because he did a whole extra pit stop. He did a 3-stop strategy, and that alone is 22 seconds of time.
Whose fault is that?
He was not. That was the Red Bull had that strategy from the off. The way they boxed him, they had that strategy from the off. They put him on a 3-stop strategy. So 22 of those seconds you're talking about are accounted for by that one pit stop.
Yeah, Antonia.
Where did the half a minute other deficit come from then?
Just being that far back in the field. What do you start, like 12?
My turn. I was tagged in. My turn. I was a Perez defender to the grave. He was I assume deep in there still is somewhere, a great defender and a great driver. But if you can't overtake, it doesn't matter how far down the pack you are. If you're a Red Bull against an RB, there is no excuse. I don't care if there's turbulent air. He can have all of the vortices he wants. There is raw pace.
pretty sure he finished ahead of both of the RBs, checking the results.
Yeah.
That was very obtuse of you. Very obtuse of you.
The penalty wasn't his fault. I think Red Bull made him drive back in a damaged state because they didn't want to risk a safety car, because then that would have cost Verstappen. They know the rules. Red Bull know the rules. They didn't want to risk a safety car, so that sacrificed Perez again. They used Perez to give Max a tow in Q3, and like you said, there was the setup compromise as well. But it's always something, isn't it? We're always having to make an excuse every single week. It was traffic. It was this time. And I think I'm due a weekend where, we don't have to make an excuse. But also, I was just going to leave it because it's such a static situation. It's just not changing at the moment. So that's why I was just going to try and brush past it.
It's not changing because Red Bull has a car that is not what they are used to having in terms of dominance.
It won the race.
And we will all right. Yeah, and also we always debate stagnant.
Barely
topics.
won the race.
We always debate stagnant topics. Mr. Ocon defender, where were Ocon's race results? Where was his improving?
He
standard?
finished right behind Gasly with the car that was 15 kilograms heavier.
No,
doesn't seem too bad to me.
Ocon's got the lighter chassis.
My point being, I think as a fan,
Gasly does.
No, Ocon's got the lighter chassis.
No, Gasly does.
We're looking for some movement in this situation. Like you were saying, Spanish, we are desperately, genuinely, in my heart, I'm searching for reasons to understand why Perez was re-signed. Because as a fan, it really feels like we're missing something. And on a weekend like this, where it's a circuit that they know so well, especially Perez, there is no excuse.
Yeah, they signed Perez to lure Max into staying there, and to me that is a sign that's the sign that can you turn the volume down a bit, Alex? And that is the sign that Verstappen hasn't made the final decision yet, or if he has, it's very, very recent. Okay, so away from Perez, please. the next guys on the block. I suppose actually we haven't really mentioned Hamilton that much. It is a podium. It did look strong. Alex, Hamilton fan, are you actually happy with that, or are you disappointed?
It'll do. I mean, it's his first podium since Singapore last year, which is mental when you think about the success that man has had. And he drove well today. He did some amazing moves into turn one, despite Perez, despite, because he was nowhere near Perez because Perez was rubbish, despite Carlos Sainz having a go and saying that Lewis ran him off the circuit, even though Sainz ran him up to the curb first.
Wait a minute, are you saying that's up for debate? Are you saying we have to ask a question?
Yeah.
Whose fault is it? What is the point in the rules if we don't enforce the rules? My goodness. Okay, so there was, contact, and I think this whose fault is basically, should Lewis Hamilton have got a penalty, or should it at least have been investigated? Who's got opinions? Okay, Rankin, whose fault was it?
Me, a brief one. I could have seen it going either way. Personally, I think it would have been a justified penalty, and it was justified also not to. But it was a very bold maneuver, in my opinion. I don't know if that's a rogue thing to say. I thought it was very out of the left field to come out with something like that.
From Hamilton?
Yes.
What? Simply up the inside when you're already alongside going into the corner and then passing?
Do you know what? By the time that they got to the end of the straight, I thought, he hasn't got the legs to do it. I thought he'd not closed the gap enough.
I thought he would have let it go, to be honest, at the point that he was at.
But they were side by side by the time they turned into the apex. And what happened was Sainz pinched Lewis to the apex, which was naughty from Sainz, which then made it difficult for Lewis to correct the car. He then had to have a correction, which then sent him into Carlos, which then put Carlos slightly off the circuit. So if we want to assign blame, and I would put it on Carlos, just because the chain of events that happened afterwards happened because Carlos pinched Lewis. But I just saw it as a great racing incident, and I don't have any blame for it, despite the fact that I'm not allowed to do it.
It's funny to me. I was taught that squeezing people like that was perfectly acceptable as long as you left them a full car on track.
He didn't have a full car on track. He was on the curb. The full car on track is to the white line, and Lewis was over the white line because Carlos had put him onto the white line. Anthony Davidson went through this on the Skypad.
Yes, the thing that I don't get to see over here in USA land. Well, that's good. I'm glad you got to see that. But
I knew you'd come at me with that one. It's why I had that one in the back pocket.
Okay. Well, I'm glad my reputation precedes me then. You have prepared. I'm winning.
I have to these days.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. It's an interesting one. By the current rules of Formula One, both drivers had to leave each other room. I think the contact was really incidental. And truthfully, it's hard for me to say who caused it in the moment, whether Sainz didn't leave Lewis quite enough room or whether it was Lewis, because it was the rears of the cars that contacted. If you looked at it from the onboards, you didn't really see either car doing anything that looked particularly bad. And I didn't get a good enough view of the back one to feel like I can fully weigh in here. So I'm just going to say, yeah, sure, Hamilton's fault. Why not? Just to irritate people.
Okay, so look, I got a couple of comments from people, and what people love to do is basically say, oh, you're a hypocrite because you say this, but now because it's Hamilton, it's different. So the main accusation I got at me was, well, Spanners always says I don't like the pushing people off. You've got to leave complete room on the outside. Therefore, it's Hamilton's fault. Now, I think my opinion is a little bit more nuanced than that. So I disagree with Alex. I don't think the initial contact actually caused Sainz to go off track. I think Sainz had opportunities to stay on track, but felt that Hamilton was basically driving him off the track. So this comes down to two things. One is the space that Hamilton moved into had been very kindly vacated by Carlos Sainz. So had Carlos Sainz held his ground and there had been contact, I would definitely have said, well, that's Hamilton's fault. He didn't leave room. Carlos Sainz was taking the room that he was entitled to, being slightly ahead, I think, at the apex, depending on where the apex is and which apex we're talking about. Is this the inside of turn 2 or is this the exit of turn 1? And then the other thing is, well, what constitutes leaving space? So I think you and I have had this conversation quite a bit, Matt, where you go, well, if it's grass on the outside, clearly Sainz wouldn't want to be on the grass. So that doesn't constitute leaving him room. Whereas if you can keep your wheels on the track and take, a normal line. So the line that Sainz took, a car might overtake and attempt an overtake by doing that. You're still on the track. So has he been sort of shoved off track? And there wasn't contact at that point on the outside. The contact was, more mid-corner in the middle of the track. So I don't think I don't like the Verstappen/Hamilton maneuver of just running people off the road. I just don't feel like that's what happened today.
Yeah, I agree with you, which is what makes it hard to really assign blame. They both sort of left room for each other, and then they were so close that we fell into that cloud of probability where they overlapped. All
right. Well, there's not enough arguing there. but Ferrari...
I'm trying to rewatch.
We could argue the Ferrari one, though, because I think Ferrari one
is interesting. So Carlos Sainz was on the radio, and he's been doing this. He's been very vocal and chippy on the radio, calling for penalties, slating other people, not completely mad for a driver to be doing, but it's definitely increased from the Carlos Sainz side. And both Leclerc and Carlos Sainz were very openly criticizing each other, both in the car and then in interviews. There's genuinely argument here. There's beef here, Vangeen.
Yeah, I mean, it's because the gloves are off now. Sainz has been removed from his seat for Lewis, which actually might be part of the reason Carlos fights Lewis particularly hard, because Lewis has stolen his seat. And why on earth would Carlos help his teammate right now? So the gloves are absolutely definitely off. I do think Leclerc ran Carlos off a lot more because Leclerc wasn't quite as close to the apex as Carlos as he should have been, and he hit the right rear of Carlos's car, and that's what sent Carlos off the circuit.
So I'm glad, despite the fact that I agree with you, you've given me something to argue with here, which is namely a Ferrari actually told Sainz on his first pit stop to do the opposite of Lewis. They were very clearly racing Lewis from the Ferrari management team point of view. This is just not a personal thing with Carlos here. But yeah, I actually went back and looked at the onboards, and the degree to which Sainz had an overspeed on Leclerc, it was absurd that Leclerc even made an attempt to defend it.
Really?
And then when I looked at Leclerc's onboards, he very clearly sees Sainz coming, sees how fast he's coming, and he does that thing that's so annoying. He just leaves his nose in there that tiny bit on entry, gets contact, and then raises his hand and says, Mom, my older brother hit me. That's so unfair.
That's the football analogy of leaving your foot in, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, but, you know, he just clipped me because we were in the middle of it. It's rubbish. It's a case of that relationship is gone.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because I like that relationship, but I think it's more the relationship Carlos has with Ferrari is gone. And he's just like, well, I'm in it for myself now, and I've got the pace. He's showing he's got the pace. He's still driving really, really well and putting in really, really good performances. And he's not going to bow down to Charles Leclerc now.
Yeah, but you say that, but I mean, Sainz actually afterwards had a really good quote. He's like, I mean, whatever, we're told to save tires, but like he was going so slow. If you look at the lap times, if I were to read them to you and you picked out the slowest time, that was Leclerc's by 2 or 3 tenths. Maybe he was saving tires, but I really think that maybe this is a case of where they said, we're going to save tires at the beginning, and somehow Leclerc thought, that means Sainz won't even try to pass me, which is absurd.
That is what he thinks. So that is definitely what Leclerc was saying in all the interviews, was we were told to save tires in that spot. So why did he come at me? But the really interesting giveaway that Leclerc said was the best place to save tires was the final turn 14. So in his head, he was like, well, I'm not going to get attacked from behind. Therefore, we both save through turn 14. And then, you know, I won't be attacked. And Sainz has gone, nah, I'm just going for it. But then, in the end, was that the best strategy for Carlos Sainz, or was he doing a bit of a Russell and focusing too much on impressing people, focusing too much on beating Charles Leclerc so that he can go and, you know, go to Williams and say, wow, add another 0 on that? Because I didn't see it like that, Matt. I didn't see that incident. I thought Leclerc had enough there to be there. I thought Sainz pinched him and squeezed him. I really, in my head, I put that all on Sainz.
Well, no, and that's okay. A lot of people, like when you watched it at first, I wouldn't blame anyone for having that opinion. Just seeing it on the TV, I went back and looked at the onboards, and it was a very done move in terms of the overspeed Sainz has. And if I'm Leclerc and looking at this in hindsight, I'm like, okay, well, I'll just do the same thing to you on DRS the following lap because we have roughly about the same pace. Or you'll go faster and burn up your tires, and I'll eventually wind up with a strategy advantage. Where Sainz's strategy went wrong, because he was fighting Hamilton, he should have really finished 4th, is Ferrari inexplicably pitted him 7 laps before Hamilton off of the medium tire and put him on the hard tire, which was by that point, I think, you know, demonstrably not a great tire to be on. And to me, I think it's a question of Ferrari just being very wrong about what the medium tire was capable of on their car, and or realizing that an oopsie had happened and maybe just trying to fix things so that Leclerc wasn't angry at them later.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to be interesting for the rest of the season because gloves are completely off there. And so Sainz and Leclerc are at war.
But I have one more thing to bring up, is if it's not bad enough, go on. Does anyone here besides me know how far behind George Russell Leclerc finished at the end of the race? I'll take that as a no. 0.3 of a second.
Yeah.
That was a P4 possibly achievable for Ferrari.
Yeah. So Vasseur was saying, no, that incident didn't cost them anything, but it did. It did. Leclerc was right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, completely. It was it's Ferrari strategy. If they did that to Sainz on purpose, pitting him, that blew their chance at the P4. And the fact that they let that fight happen in the first place and that they didn't give clear enough instructions to both drivers about what the rules were, that also cost them.
Okay, we're on to any other business in this meeting. You noticed some struggles down the back end of the field, Antonia?
We've already spoken about Perez.
Leave me alone. I feel attacked.
Vicious. Oh my goodness. You know what it is? He just wants to be quoted in the newspaper like Brad.
Was Brad quoted in the newspaper?
Oh, did you not know? That's why I said,
No.
yeah, he was in the Express. And then he had death threats. Please don't send my panel death threats. He had death threats for about 3 weeks. So 3 weeks later, I said, have the death threats stopped? And he said, well, they've slowed down. So, yeah, that's why when you were absolutely having a go at him earlier, I spelt out your name.
Do I need to start watching what I say?
Why do you think I'm super nice about Perez?
Oh,
I'm
goodness,
I'm
I wouldn't
frightened.
I wouldn't want the high quality journalism of the Express to catch up
Well,
to
that's
me.
not going to help, is it? That's not going to help.
Oh,
Anyway,
gosh, got to be careful, guys.
you notice some struggles down the bottom end of the field, Rankin.
It's just starting to bother me a little bit how horrendously Alfa Romeo and the RBs are doing. And actually Aston Martin. Actually, you know what? Why not slander all of the grid? It's becoming really quickly a divide between the top 4 teams and then literally everybody else. And over the past year, I've kind of got used to looking to the midfield for the battles because that's the only place that they were. And now that the cream of the crop, per se, are starting to rise through, upgrades and development, it's really bothering me that teams like, the RBs, where they've got really 2 good drivers, 1.5 good drivers, if we're being real about Ricardo,
Blimey.
it's not really good enough, in my opinion, especially, for example, with like Aston Martin, with all of the resources that they should have, and they showed themselves to have at the start of last season.
Didn't Alonso say in the middle of the last race that this is the last race without a podium? Yeah, you suck, You suck, Fernando. He was terrible this weekend. He couldn't put a lap together. He couldn't put a lap together. He did nothing in the race. He went backwards. It was a brilliant sight to see. I loved it.
I forgot you absolutely hate his guts. I don't know. I genuinely say this out of love for Aston Martin because I really, really do like the team a lot. But where are they? I don't think they were mentioned by commentary at all weekend or all today. At all.
Yeah, they went missing.
They were nowhere.
And the only other mention of Aston Martin I want to do is I just got really angry in FP3. Lewis Hamilton did impede Lance Stroll in practice. It happens in practice.
It's a practice session. Who cares?
Yeah, but it happens, and straight away Hamilton just goes, "Yeah, my bad. Sorry about that." And in the steward's report, Lance Stroll admitted that he opened the steering up into Hamilton to express his displeasure. He said, I drove my car into Lewis Hamilton on purpose because I was mad. And that's a reprimand. How does he get away with that? I will talk about the Leclerc one as well, because I think the Leclerc one was even more aggressive and actually a bit more dangerous. But the stewards said, okay, well, these things, they weren't actually dangerous. It wouldn't have caused like a problem. But you're still deliberately driving your car into someone on purpose. You've got to stamp that out. Are there no parents in the steward's room? Have they not parented teenagers?
I definitely don't think it has anything to do with the fact that his dad's a billionaire with loads and loads of power. I don't think that comes into it at all.
You're wrong. I think that is an influence, Alex.
Do you? Oh, that's a really interesting point. Let's talk more about how Lawrence Stroll. Maybe they didn't get mentioned as much on the feed this weekend because they didn't pay enough money.
I'm not actually saying that the stewards are being influenced by people. That's a big call. I'm not doing that. But it's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong to not stamp down on deliberately using your car to express your anger.
I will say, actually, in that vein, and I've found it out about other racing series, and I cannot speak to how true it is for F1, but teams can pay money to have attention be put on them for races.
What?
So teams can pay and ask, and I don't know how many racing series this is. This is various ones that I've encountered, and I don't know if it's F1, but teams can pay to be given a spotlight and to be showcased, for the commentary to talk about them a little bit. And I think that's a little bit interesting.
What, like in a Netflix documentary? Like the first episode?
No, seriously. They can say,
That's really funny.
Here's a tenner. Make sure you say my son's name.
And, this isn't like ones that I personally work with. just to make that exceptionally clear. But across the board, I just think it's quite interesting that you can be a very midfield team and you can say, hey, can you make us look interesting, please?
Well, in the larger narrative of Formula One, I'm not surprised about this at all. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if they don't get briefing notes from FOM regarding the larger picture and the health of the sport. And maybe it might be nice to blah, 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 and yak, yak, yak. But as regards these specific incidents, which I do want to bring the spotlight back to this, if I was going to defend Lance Stroll, the only way I could do it is I would separate the fact that he opened from the steering from the fact that he actually made contact with Hamilton. And I would find that actually almost believable. Like, I opened the steering, but I didn't realize I was going to hit him, is a thing that I would believe, because I think that he does struggle in certain instances with knowing where the corners of his car actually is, based on like lots of past incidents we've discussed in the past.
No.
And probably the future too. But the Leclerc thing reminded me really of the Vettel thing in Azerbaijan. Remember when they were behind the safety car and he drove up and just smacked into Hamilton? And I just, where's the penalty? Where's the penalty for doing something that obvious?
All right. Yes. I'm astounded that they got away with a reprimand. Let's move on to the podium. I think that was a very interesting Spanish Grand Prix, helped quite possibly by the removal of that final chicane. It's not a chicane that I hated as much as some of the other chicanes, but it has definitely opened up. Oh, Alex, don't make me list chicanes, Alex. It's not.
It's the worst chicane in motorsport.
No, it isn't.
If you
Without
start
a shadow
talking
of a
about
doubt.
Monza, I will be raging.
Okay.
Monza's great. Ignore Spanners when he talks about Monza. He's very wrong.
Okay.
The chicane in Spain that they've now got rid of was the worst chicane in the entirety of motorsport.
It doesn't even touch the Imola final chicane for worstness of chicane.
No,
it's not even top
that's fine.
three.
You can scoot over there and it's cool. And it still helps the racing. All that chicane did was kill the racing.
It's not even top three. The Singapore turn one chicane is above that. Monza first chicane is worse than that Spanish
not
chicane.
having that.
Right.
Not
Things that
having
Spanish
that.
is wrong
The
about.
next show is a chicane special where we argue about what is the worst
Sign
chicane.
me up.
What is the
Oh,
worst
yeah.
We'll just
chicane?
fight
Me
for
and
an
Jeansy,
hour.
you know what? Surprise rivals turn into against Spanners. Yeah, that's
Let's
right.
go,
We're
girl.
turning on you.
Road Atlantis is making an appearance. So. Road Atlanta, not Road Atlantis. Ooh, I went all intergalactic
I
council.
wasn't
again.
going to pull you up on that. I was going to just let it slide.
I was going to go with the reign of the chicane in Spain falls mainly on Jeansy's pain, but that's just me being clever.
Can we kick him out the call for that?
Yeah, I think
Where's the
maybe.
button?
So
The worst thing he's ever said.
the turn 14 not having the chicane, turn 14 being the final corner, really opened up turn one. And what it meant was we did get passing, we got movement in the field. But my question to you guys would be, before we go into the awards, could we have disabled DRS completely in that race and had a better race? So Lewis Hamilton had opportunities to pass Carlos Sainz in the second half of the lap, had caught up, had got a run a couple of times. And then as they got to kind of turn 7, 8, 9 up the hill, you could sort of see him mentally going, oh, actually, if I get ahead now, I'm in the DRS zone. So let's wait for the DRS. And that's, I think a lot of drivers waited for the DRS. If we didn't have that DRS zone, you'd have had a lot more Russell, Lando, Norris style battles. Alex is processing it.
I'm processing. I
disagree. I
understand
don't
what you're
think so.
saying. There were multiple occasions where Lewis was behind Sainz, as you say, coming into the chicane, the turn 6, 7 chicane, and then into turn 10 right-hander, where he literally slammed on the anchors. He thought about it and bailed out.
Yeah, it's a hard
and
one.
I got to be honest, I thought, you wimp, go for it. I don't think Sainz would have had a comeback for him because he was so much faster at that point because he had fresh tyres. So I don't think that had much to do with it. At the moment, I still think F1 needs DRS, hopefully with the new regulations and blah, 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 that having the active error will help get away with that. But I still think this would have been a very different race and Lando might not have got through the field as easily as he did without DRS.
Okay, that's interesting. All right. Well, now we will do the awards. Now, which way round is it? That means we get to end on a positive. So we'll do
Bad one.
Bad thing first.
Bad thing first. That's the one. So, panel, who missed the apex?
Oh no, you missed the apex.
Okay, who shall we start with? Let's start with our superstar pit lane reporter, Antonia Rankin. Antonia, you have been out in a sweaty jumpsuit, early F1 Ted Kravitz style, when the F1 pit lane reporters used to be in like a full boiler suit they give you and send you to hot locations, and you must smell a lot.
I like to think it's an aroma of like, this is hard work, in a cool way. Like, look how hard I'm working.
Do you notice that you get a lot of like room on your own? People let you have the lift by yourself, kind of thing.
No, you know what? It's quite funny. Everyone's really nice to me on the race weekends where I don't need to wear it.
Okay.
But no, it's I was just saying before the show, I'm getting my own special like custom one now that this is an actual thing I'm doing.
Actual gig.
And I'll have my name on with my little Union Jack. I'm quite excited.
Yeah, you're legit. So where should people go to find all that stuff out, and where can they watch your pit lane reporting?
Well, next weekend I'm covering the 24 hours of Spa, which will be...
It's too long.
Oh, I'm so excited.
What series is that?
GT World Challenge. So you can watch it on Sky Sports F1, and it's also on YouTube if you don't want to have to pay.
So you're literally going to be on Sky Sports F1 doing that, or you have been? Oh,
yeah.
Psh, nice. Okay. I mean, that you could go all the way then. You could go all the way to F1 doing that kind of thing.
Maybe.
What is your theory on humanoid reptilians that have taken over the world because they're unhappy about human beings taking over and being the chosen species of the Intergalactic Council?
You're saying that I'm not one of them.
I got too close. Who missed the apex for you?
If I'm completely honest, anyone arguing that McLaren were the better car today?
Oh.
Better car.
But on a real note, I'd love to see a bit more competition going on in the bottom half of the grid, to be honest. I think their battles between themselves even don't seem to have a lot of conviction. They don't seem to have a lot of sparkiness and excitement. And I'd love them to be fighting their own races a little bit and not just thinking, well, we're not in the top 5. Never mind, guys. Maybe next time.
So it is you and me. It is Reddykin that are sitting here going, actually, I don't think McLaren have got the best package. I think it's close, but I do agree with you. I think Red Bull still had the overall better car, but there's clearly a feeling within McLaren. They think they've got the best car. But I just, I can't look away from the fact that Max just cruised past Russell and Norris was unable to. So there's at least areas of the car where Red Bull is stronger. So Alex Vangeen, you've been making nice little videos about your little go-karts. People should go and check out your YouTube channel.
My big manly go-kart, thank you very much.
Little go-karts.
Yes, been making video. I've been really enjoying making the videos, and I've now gone and bought a new fancy camera to try and make better videos. And I'm making I've already started making my video for my next race, which isn't for 6 weeks.
Oh, exciting!
So I'm actually relaunching my YouTube channel. So I'm doing lots of changes to it at the moment to make it a little bit more flashy and a little bit more up to date, rather than just some bloke who just posts random videos. So at Alex Vangeen on YouTube.
Cool.
It's actually Alex Vangeen Racing on YouTube.
Nice.
And you can go and find that.
Yeah. Matt 2 Trumpets. How's things going, buddy? Looking forward to seeing you over here in the UK. Go and follow Matt at MattPT55 if you want to hang out with me and Matt and have a beer. July 6th. Saturday at Formula Fast Milton Keynes. Click the link in the show notes below or go to missedapexpodcast.com/live show. Who missed the go on.
Sorry, I jumped on you there. Lag. I was going to say, if you're in the New York City area, June 28th, this Friday, come see me with the New York City Ska Orchestra, please. If you're around and want to check it out, it is entirely free. 7 o'clock, Friday night.
And I think mid-September, me and Matt are going to be in the New York area or a few hours drive from it for a Missed Apex meetup there as well. So we'll give you details close to the time. All right, who missed the Apex for you?
This is the thing. Like, I expected all of the soft targets to be taken, but they've just been left for me. And we mentioned some of them, but really, I think it's got to be Aston. at the end of the day, the expectation versus the reality of what they delivered is the gap is largest there. And you have Alonso saying things like, well, this is a racetrack that pretty much puts cars in pace order where we belong. And where did he finish? 12th? I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know what the problem is. They've had enough time to recover from the technical directive last summer, and they're lost right now. Maybe it's the Mercedes wind tunnel. Maybe they'll get their new wind tunnel going and it'll all be better. But oof, man, if I was spending that much money on a thing and it was working out like that, I would be asking some hard questions, which might be also part of the problem.
Okay, and I'm going to give my missed apex. I'm going to give it to George Russell because, okay, he struggled with the tire management. He was unable. It looks like he was unable to do the preferred strategy, which was soft, medium, soft today. And so for the second stop, he either had to go onto hards or commit to a 2-stop. And I don't think it was made out very much from sources I saw that it's just so unlucky. Like, how unlucky that the hard tyre happened not to work. And I don't think it is unlucky because I think the teams knew they were locked in at the beginning that soft, medium, soft was the best strategy, even on new softs. And it was the race pace and the tyre wear that forced him into that position. So I don't think that's unlucky. I think he gets the missed apex. And it's just the thing that was unlucky. This isn't his fault. He was fighting for his positions. That's fine. But he was fighting for positions he was never going to keep, and that stopped us having a battle up the front. That bit's not his fault at all. It's just like, that's kind of ruined it. All right, now we get to end on the positive thing. Okay, Antonia, what was your thing of the weekend?
Oh, I don't know. I think I might be biased having been at McLaren today, but I'll give it to them anyway, because since they got their wind tunnel personally sorted at their place, their development curve has been absolutely exceptional. And it has been a very clear cause and effect there. And I think it's really genuinely fantastic to see a team like them with so much heritage, so much history in the sport doing well again. Genuinely, I think it's one of the most popular overall teams for everyone. Everyone's got a bit of a place in their heart for McLaren, and it's great to see.
If I bundle in my thing of the weekend with this, it would be the Mercedes updates as well. So Mercedes are a little bit behind, but they've got more to come. So the two of those teams together, getting their act together, might give us a really good, thrilling end of the season. And the championship isn't over. I think I did the championship maths on Lewis Hamilton. And I think I said, if he finishes first and George Russell finishes second every race, because Mercedes are dominant, I think they still need fastest laps to stop Max Verstappen. But I think Leclerc and Lando Norris still have a realistic shot if one of the teams makes a step up. And I think in the development race, everyone's kind of in it. The top 4 teams right now, I think you would be foolish now to go, right, come the end of the summer break, I can predict exactly the running order and who's got the fastest car. It could be genuinely one of those 4 teams. I'm going to bet it's Red Bull's the favourite, then McLaren, then Mercedes, and Ferrari just have a little bit of a track record of going to sleep in the development at this point of the season, which is the only reason I would put them 4th at the moment. Vangeen, what was your thing of the weekend?
I'm going to keep on the McLaren hype train, and I'm going to say Lando Norris, because you've just seen that switch flick in his head of, I can win races now. And he has the bit between his teeth, and he drove brilliantly today. The only mistake he made today was a very slightly poor start that cost him nothing.
The race.
It cost him the race, but the mistake was so tiny, but obviously the ramifications were huge. But I just think it was really, really great to just see him go, right, I can take this to Max now. It's not hopeless. I'm not just fighting for the second step on the podium. I can actually fight for points. I mean, there's 69 points between Lando and Max, which is a bit big. But we are on race, 10?
Yeah, there's loads of races left.
No
there's
gaps still there's still 14 races left.
Don't look at his power unit allocation then.
Yeah, well, no.
Tell me.
No, Max is going to have to take a penalty at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's looking that way.
But he could still take the next 2 races off and still be leading the championship relatively comfortably.
Things happen.
but stuff does happen. So, but no, I it's just nice to all of a sudden have seen Lando turn it on and go, I can be a contender now, and putting in the performances that show that.
Matt Trumpets, who missed? Oh no! Oh, thing of the weekend. What was your thing of the weekend? Yeah, thing of the weekend.
I missed the apex by not mentioning Alpine passed Haas in the championship points. But who is my thing of the weekend? It's got to be Lewis Hamilton, and there's two reasons. One, Mercedes pitted him on lap 44, which I thought was hilarious. I'm pretty sure the strategy team worked that one out in advance. But mostly because he took a nap on the couch for the press conference after the race, because he was so excited to be there. He got there and none of the other drivers were there. And he was just like, okay, I'm going to just chill here for a while.
Yeah, and Max Verstappen offered him a massage. And so actually I'm going to allow myself a second thing of the weekend, which is that we have got Lando Norris and Max Verstappen up on that podium, realizing kind of what a big deal it was for, the 7-time world champion to be back on the podium after all that time, and absolutely drenched him in champagne and sort of made him the focus of the attention for the podium, which was kind of really sweet. Alex, you got a little one?
Yeah, my little one is Valtteri Bottas. Again, another masterful piece of social media from them, which is the woman kicking the water bottles and him batting them away. Just again, Bottas being the completely unexpected comedy genius of social media.
See, to me, that's how they missed the apex, though. That's all they got. They have no updates, but
who cares about the racing
something
bit?
Funny with Bottas.
They're at the back of the grid anyway. Just let Bottas be funny. I love new, happy, funny Bottas. He makes me smile, and that's all I need.
And do you know who else makes me smile? Is our patrons. We would not be able to do this and our midweek content without them. If you've got this far into the show and you're still here, you might want to consider seeing if you want to be one of our fantastic supporters at patreon.com/missed apex. Join us in our live Discord chat, which is running 24/7. We did the Patreon pod live in the Discord and had call-ins and spoke to listeners who dropped in there as well. And you get an ad-free RSS feed to paste into your search bar. You can link that to your Spotify as well. And you'll get the satisfaction of helping an independent podcast stay in the charts, because we are in the US and UK charts, surrounded by corporate giants. Just little missed apex there because of our patrons. Patreon.com/missed apex. We'll see you sometime midweek. And then for the Austrian Grand Prix race review, until we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast.